Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is Al24 Midnight News coming to you live from the capital Algiers, and to the headlines. Italy expresses its support to the initiative of the Algerian president to send envoys to Niger for a political solution, and Algiers again reiterated its rejection of any kind of military intervention to resolve the crisis. In Tripoli, the head of the National Unity Government in Libya affirms his government's determination to continue combating terrorism in a parallel with development. The Kremlin declared a close meeting between Putin and Erdogan and denies the West's hints of Moscow's involvement in Prigozhin plane crash. Former U.S. President Donald Trump surrendered at the Fulton County Jail, where he was booked on 13 felony counts related to overturn the results of the presidential election in Georgia. Hello again and welcome. The Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced on Friday the upcoming visit to Algeria of the President of Benin, Patrice Talon. A statement of the Algerian Foreign Ministry indicated that Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf agreed with his Beninese counterpart during his visit to Cotonou to prepare for a visit in order to give a qualitative new impetus to bilateral relations. A press release from Algerian Foreign Ministry said that the head of the Algerian diplomacy, Ahmed Attaf, received a phone call on Friday from his Italian counterpart, Antonio Tajani, who affirmed that the Italian government supports and highly welcomes the initiative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, which aims to prevail the approach of political solution to the crisis in Niger. Mr. Tajani indicated that Italy fully shares Algeria's concern about the repercussions of the use of force, underlying his country's willingness to support Algeria's efforts to ease the situation and secure a return to constitutional order in Niger through peaceful means. Also, the Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf examined on Friday with his Beninese counterpart in Cotonou the latest developments in the crisis besetting in Niger, part of his diplomatic tour entrusted by Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. A statement of the Algerian Foreign Ministry indicated that the two sides also discussed during their lengthy talks ways to contribute to easing the situation and securing a return to constitutional order in the country with the aim to preserving its security and stability, affirming on the occasion their adherence to the legal framework of African Union, which provides for the fight against the scourge of unconstitutional changes of governments.
Je ne vous surprendrai pas en vous disant que
I won't surprise you if I tell you that the core subject of these political consultations is the crisis in Niger, which is at the center of ECOWAS's concerns, and it is also a matter of concern for Algeria. I would like to say that Algeria advocates for the principle of rejecting unconstitutional change, as during the African Union summit held in Algeria in 1999, those criteria were adopted. The second axis of our consultations is what should be done for the swift return to democratic and constitutional order, and the third and most important axis, which is at the heart of our talks, is the common interest in mobilizing our region and our countries against increasing threat. Algeria and Benin are attached to the principle of giving priority to economic and social development.
la priorité à donner au développement économique et social.
Also, the Algerian diplomacy chief stressed the need to give all chances to peaceful political solution to end the crisis in Niger, whether through ECOWAS or through special envoys who flock the capital, Niamey.
L'Algérie a été systématiquement contre les interventions étrangères, partout où elles se sont produites.
Algeria rejects systematically foreign interventions anywhere before exhausting all peaceful solutions. Resorting to force is always an element of exacerbation and not a solution. I believe that, like ECOWAS, Algeria is endeavoring through the current efforts to seek a peaceful solution to this crisis.
Pacifique à cette crise. Nous sommes actuellement dans le temps.
We are now looking for a political solution, whether through ECOWAS or envoys to Niamey. The envoy of President Tebboune was in Niamey yesterday to pave the way for a political solution by tabling all our views and efforts to give all the chances to the political solution.
Pour donner sa chance, toute sa chance à la solution politique.
Meanwhile, Benin Foreign Minister Adjali Bakari stressed that Presidents Abdelmajid Tebboune and Patrice Talon were among the first to discuss the crisis in Niger and are still in permanent contact about its developments, stressing that Benin and Algeria share the same positions, rejecting unconstitutional change of governments.
Dès la survenance de cette crise,
Since the onset of this crisis, President Talon and President Tebboune were among the first to discuss the crisis in Niger and have been in permanent contact for 3 weeks. I would like to emphasize what Mr. Attaf said. We share the same vision about making change through election and not through force. We also exchange points of views rejecting the establishment of unconstitutional military system in our region. In this context, we have worked together to implement the objectives set by President Tebboune and Talon as soon as possible. We have great hopes for a quick return to constitutional order.
Niger welcomed on Friday a possible military support of Mali and Burkina Faso in case of foreign military intervention. The position was made public in a statement by the Nigerian Foreign Ministry following a visit to Niamey by the foreign ministers of Burkina Faso and Mali. The statement further stated that the ministers from Burkina Faso and Mali reiterated their opposition to armed involvement against Nigerian people since they view such actions as acts of war.
The Burkina Faso and Mali ministers reiterated their country's solidarity and support for Niger in the face of the illegal, illegitimate and inhuman sanctions imposed by ECOWAS and the EU this month, in violation of the texts of the said institutions. They further reiterated their rejection of an armed intervention against the people of Niger, which will be considered a declaration of war. To this end, they agreed to join a set-up secretariat for security issues. They welcomed the signing by the President of the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Motherland, Brigadier General Abdurrahman Chiane, of 2 orders on August 24, 2023, authorizing the defense and security forces of Burkina Faso and Mali to intervene in Nigerian territory in the event of aggression.
D'intervenir en territoire nigérien en cas d'agression.
To a different matter now, the head of the Libyan National Unity Government, Abdelhamid Dbeiba, announced on Thursday that the authorities arrested the leader in Daesh terrorist organization involved in planning and perpetrating terrorist attacks against the headquarters of the Electoral Commission of the National Oil Corporation and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the capital Tripoli in 2018. The announcement was made by Dbeiba in a speech broadcasted by the official Libyan television.
The targeting of the headquarters of the High National Electoral Commission in May 2018 and the National Oil Corporation in September the same year, as well as the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in December the same year, I announced that as part of a high-profile intelligence and security operation, our security and judiciary forces managed on Tuesday to arrest a leader in the Daesh terrorist organization involved in planning and perpetrating these terrorist and suicide attacks, which targeted our country's institutions and their staff.
The Sahrawi Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mohammed Sidati, affirmed the determination of the Sahrawi people to continue the armed struggle until achieving their endeavors for freedom and independence by all possible means.
The Sahrawi people are determined to continue the struggle and militancy until they achieve their objective of freedom and independence. And by all means, armed struggle, diplomatic struggle, and all fronts advance in harmony to achieve this objective. 50 years of struggle gave a place to the Sahrawi people and confirmed that the Polisario Front is a national liberation movement that has its roots not only in the Sahrawi people, but in all authentic liberation movements, and their fight is fair to achieve freedom and independence.
The top UN humanitarian official Martin Griffiths on Friday voiced concern about the spread of violence in Sudan and said a lasting conflict could tip the entire region into a humanitarian catastrophe. Speaking at a news briefing in Geneva, Griffith spokesman Jens Lyric said the hunger could consume Sudan, warning that hundreds of thousands of Millionaires children could die if they do not receive treatment, as many diseases are spreading.
We've just issued a statement on Sudan from Emergency Relief Coordinator Martin Griffiths. It contains a stark warning from the UN's humanitarian chief that war and hunger could consume Sudan if those fighting in this conflict do not put the people of Sudan above their pursuit of power and resources. From the capital, Khartoum and Darfur, the war has gone viral and is now spreading to Kordofan. In South Kordofan's capital, Kadugli, food stocks have been fully depleted, and clashes and road blockages prevent aid workers from reaching the hungry.
Away from the African continent to Asia, particularly the Middle East, today the Zionist occupation forces launched a campaign of arrest against a number of Palestinians in the West Bank. The entity's forces arrested 4 Palestinians from Ramallah and Al-Bira governorate and arrested 3 others in Al-Khalil after a massive house-to-house search campaign. In addition, the occupation forces today targeted farmers and the sheep herders with bullets and tear gas canisters east of Gaza City. The European Union strongly condemned the statement of the Zionist Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who considered that he and his family's right to life and movement in the occupied West Bank is more important than the Palestinians' right to movement. In a statement published Friday, the European Union affirmed that relations between Palestine and the entity must be based on respect for human rights and democratic principles, and stressed that all human beings are equal and must be treated in the same way.
The values of democracy and respect for human rights are at the heart of the partnership with the European Union, including with regard to citizens living under occupation in the Palestinian territories. The settlements are illegal under international law, an obstacle to peace and a threat to the implementation of the two-state solution. We called for allowing a tangible improvement in freedom of movement of Palestinians, allowing for economic and social development and stopping disturbing the living conditions of the Palestinians.
US will not walk away from Middle East, a top general said Thursday, emphasizing that the region's critical role in the country's national security priorities during an interview with Jordan Al-Malaka TV. Al-Marik Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said that regions is very important and very significant to the United States for a lot of reasons. Milley noted that the long-standing relation with the Middle East will continue, as he described the situation in the West Bank as very difficult.
I think the United States has been committed to the Middle East really since before World War II in the 1930s. It's a critical region for the United States in terms of U.S. national security priorities. We've got Asia, Europe, Middle East, Africa, South America. We have a lot of global commitments all over the world. But the Middle East is clearly very, very important and very significant to the United States for a lot of reasons. We have very close friendships and partnerships. We want to make sure that the region is stable. Obviously, the region is a primary source of oil and energy resources for other parts of the world. So we've had a long-standing relationship with the Middle East, and I suspect that we will continue to have that. I can't imagine that the United States would ever walk away from the Middle East. I think it's too important to U.S. national security interests, and I think we'll remain committed for many, many years and decades to come.
The United States top general confirmed on Thursday that Ukraine was likely to get the F-16 fighter just soon and said its counteroffensive against the Russian invasion has been going slowly and has a partial success.
The F-16s, that is moving forward, actually. So there's a training program in place, and they'll likely to receive F-16s here in the not-too-distant future. Are remaining. This is not over yet. So I think it's frankly too early to say whether it succeeded or failed. It clearly has had partial success to date. Now, the speed at which the offensive is being undertaken is slower than the planners had thought. Again, it's bloody, it's long, and it's slow, and we had predicted that several months ago.
The Russian presidency said on Friday that there was an understanding that the presidents of Turkey and Russia would meet in person soon. Reports said that the Turkish president intends to raise the issue of resuming the grain deal during talks with his Russian counterpart. It comes as Ankara attempts to persuade Moscow to return to the Black Sea grain deal.
There is an understanding that the meeting between Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan will take place soon. We usually synchronize announcements of such visits with our partner countries, and we will announce shortly when and where exactly it will take place. The meeting is already being prepared, and it is being prepared very thoroughly.
Russian presidency has denied role in plane crash believed to have killed Wagner Group leader Prigozhin. The Kremlin said on Friday that Western suggestions that Wagner boss had been killed on its orders in a plane crash were an absolute lie.
There is now a great deal of speculation surrounding this plane crash and the tragic deaths of the plane's passengers, including Yevgeny Prigozhin. Of course, in the West, all this speculation is presented from a well-known angle. All of this is an absolute lie, and it is necessary to rely exclusively on facts when covering this issue. There are not many facts yet because they need to be established in the course of investigative actions, which are taking place at the moment.
In a recent escalation of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Moscow claims to have thwarted the Ukrainian attack using a barrage of missiles, primarily aimed at Crimea. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces accuse Russia of adopting new tactics to evade their air defense systems. Hassan Burkani's report.
After 18 months of ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, tensions remain high. In a determined response, Kiev intensifies its counterattacks targeting Russia's interior with missiles and drones. Early reports indicate that Ukraine attempts to strike civilian targets using modified S-200 missiles. However, Russia's air defense systems intercepted the missile over the Kaluga region, bordering Moscow. Recent developments reveal that Russia successfully thwarted an attack using a barrage of Ukrainian missiles, notably directed toward Crimea.
In the last 24 hours, we intercepted 5 HIMARS multiple rocket launchers, a US-made HARM anti-radar missile, and a converted S-200 anti-aircraft guided missile. Additionally, 73 Ukrainian unmanned drones were neutralized using electronic warfare, including in areas like Olshana in Kharkiv region.
In recent times, Crimea has faced persistent aerial and naval drone attacks due to Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive. Moscow reports downing 25 drones directed at Crimea last July, preceded by the downing of 18 others earlier this month. In turn, the White House announced discussion between President Joe Biden and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky regarding the training of Ukrainian pilots to operate F-16s, as disclosed by the U.S. Department of Defense.
Following English language training for pilots in September, F-16 flying training is expected to begin in October at Morris Air National Guard Base in Tucson, Arizona, facilitated by the Air National Guard's 162nd Wing. Although we do not have specific numbers to share at this time in regards to how many Ukrainians will participate in this training, We do anticipate it will include several pilots and dozens of maintainers.
This development follows Norway's recent pledge to provide Ukraine with a number of these American fighters. Norway becomes the third country to offer such support, following Washington's authorization for its allies to supply Kyiv with advanced weaponry. The situation remains tense as both sides navigate the complexities of the ongoing conflict.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Kiev on Friday. Both discussed the Black Sea grain export deal that Russia quit last month. The talks aimed at reviving a deal with Russia, allowing the safe passage of grain across the Black Sea. Former U.S. President Donald Trump surrendered Thursday at the Fulton County Jail. It was there where for the first time a former U.S. president was subjected to mugshot. He was booked on the 13 felony counts related to an alleged scheme to overturn the results of the presidential election in Georgia.
Deport to Fulton County Jail in Georgia, Donald Trump was writing himself into history in a way he probably wouldn't be satisfied with. How not when he is now the first US president to submit to a mugshot. As soon as the photograph was taken, the mugshot showing a scowling and unsmiling Donald Trump became the picture of the year.
We will not have another president in our lifetimes perp-walked, mugshotted, fingerprinted and bonded out of a county jail. This should be an aberration. And the aberration of Trump is why this picture will become essentially his presidential portrait in the minds of most Americans.
It is a remarkable day in US history, seen by some as a day of shame. Trump, who is accused of colluding with 18 other defendants to overturn the 2020 election result, spent less than 30 minutes inside Atlanta's Fulton County Jail and then was released on a $2,100 bond. Despite all of this, the former US president has, as many times before, insisted that he is not guilty.
What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. And everybody knows it. I've never had such support. And that goes with the other ones too. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election. There's never been anything like it in our country before. This is their way of campaigning.
Trump is facing escalating legal troubles that could impact his presidential campaign next year. But what is sure for now is that Donald Trump has entered US history.
The Danish government said on Friday it was proposing legislation that would make it illegal to burn copies of Quran in the public places, part of the Nordic countries' effort to de-escalate tensions with Muslim countries. Denmark and Sweden have seen a lot of protests in public in recent weeks where copies of Quran, or rather the Holy Book of Quran, have been burned or otherwise damaged, prompting outrages in Muslim nations, which have demanded the Nordic government to put a stop to the burning of this holy book.
Når enkelte personer demonstrativt stiller sig op og afbrænder Koranen på den måde, som vi dagligt har set.
As the Danish intelligence service has informed us, the recent Quran burnings have had a consequence for the current threat picture, and the terror threat against Denmark is heightened. Freedom of expression is a cornerstone of democracy in Denmark. Therefore, the government wishes for a limited and precise legal intervention. The government will propose legislation that prohibits the inappropriate handling of objects with essential religious significance for a religious community. The bill will make it punishable, for example, to publicly burn the Quran, the Bible, or the Torah.
På den måde gør det strafbart, hvis man for eksempel offentligt afbrænder Koranen, Bibelen eller Toraen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for taking part with us in this late hour. Thank you ever so much for being with us again. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say, Diane, take care of yourself and good night.